All right. I think we're live. At least
Hello.
counting up in the corner. Hello. Welcome to book part 2 of content modeling. This is the second chapter of our 3-part series where we're talking about how to model a bookstore in Crystallize with proper semantics and proper relations between different books, etc. And if you haven't seen part 1, we recommend that you see that as well, because now we're jumping into part 2, which is great.
That's good, Didrik. And the title for this part is basically storytelling, and for us that means to give as much detailed information as possible about the product. So we will nerd out on the semantics, on the product variants, on with the books we will look into how you can create a series, for example, and we will use the starting point from the last stream. We have uploaded a few books in the meantime, and there's a funny thing here because we have the Lord of the Rings books, and then we have the Game of Thrones books, and you can clearly see that the author of Game of Thrones, he's not inspired by Tolkien, because he starts all his books with "a" and not "the." So that's a fun fact for you there. We did the last time use a shape called author. We have decided in this stream to change that to a contributor. So this is just a semantic renaming, because we will go further into the specification of different types of books and different contributors in different roles. So we have basically just changed the name of the shape to contributor and not author, and we'll get back to some more examples that makes why.
Yeah.
So where do we want to start, Didrik? Because now we have The Hobbit and we have some other books, and we have the base structure with the title, summary, we have the author, we have the optional meta for web, we also have the topics that we added last time, but I'm thinking it would be cool to have some different versions or variants of this book, right?
Definitely, because a book rarely comes in, say, shape or form. It could be a hardcover, it could be a digital download, like what's it called again?
EPUB.
EPUB, thank you. Yeah, EPUB. Or it could be an audiobook. And of course, it is the same book, but it has different properties. Let's say, for example, that a digital ebook doesn't have width, height, and weight, or a audiobook doesn't have pages. For example, how many pages is this book? So we want to generate 4 variants, like Boyd is doing here now, using the variant generator to create all of his variants. You can see he added some attributes, a attribute, which is called type, and then you have paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook.
And of course, just putting some random prices here, but here you see that we have the 4 variants that Didrik talked about. But we would probably have a different image for them, wouldn't we?
Most likely.
So what you can, of course, do is maybe the paperback and hardcover has the same, but if you go into, for example, the audiobook, maybe we would like to modify the cover and do like this as an example. And do we want to do that with maybe the ebook also? We'll just use just to have a couple of different.
And the general thing here is that we have a product which is basically combined of different variants. We also have what you see here, product story, which is what we modeled in the last stream. The product story, what do we want to talk about for this book? But since we now have more dimensions on a variant, we probably need some different information for each variant as well, instead of having it as a flat product on a product story. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, because here we have attributes. So these are key value pairs that you can add to products, typically for filtering, creating a UI for product selections and so on. But if we want to do something simple, like, okay, we have the author, but in the audiobook, there's a new person that has contributed with the narration, right? So should we go back to the book shape and do some additions? And maybe we just start here with okay, we have the author. This is the author of the book, and I think that's typically one or more authors that has written the series. And even though it's an audiobook, it's still Tolkien, which is the author. But we might want to have, and this is where we're changing the structure of the product from a product story, which are components that are added to the product as a whole. The variant story are components that are added but are unique per variant. Paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook in this case. We will use...
And all the variants will, of course, share all the shapes and components, or all the components that you're putting in here, but it can have different values that you input. So, for example, now, when you're creating a chunk called contributor, because it's still the same author, like we talked about, so that belongs on product story. But since one of the variants that we already have is an audiobook, we know that it's probably going to have a narrator, a person who is talking, just like we are doing now, boy. And other than that, what else? There could be different editions. So a illustrator could be a thing. The Hobbit has different illustrators for different types of variants of the book. So that also belongs into a variant component.
And what I have created while Didrik was speaking is we call it a content chunk. It's a structure where you can add multiple components in a semantic grouping. So we have here a relation to a contributor. And then we have a definition using the selection component where we define the role. So author, narrator, illustrator is what we added here. And we also added some content quality rules with it needs to be exact. So this means it's basically a radio box selection. The last magic trick is to flip this switch here to repeatable, which means that this is a chunk specific to each variant of the product, and it's repeatable. So quite quick to do.
Should we just show how this works before we move on and add more components?
I think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the way this works now is, let's say that we want to do the hardcover version, and maybe this is the illustrated version of the book. Now you see that I'm on the actual product variant, which has a specific SKU. We'll get back to SKU, GT, and ISBN later. It's the hardcover version. This is the attribute that we've added. There's some stock and price information. And then we see here the variant story. And here we have, by default, nothing, because we haven't added anything. It is the chunk that we just defined. And once I add an element into this chunk, we see that I get a lot of warnings, which is good, because this means that I need to say that we have the illustrator, and I don't remember if it was Rob or John that was the illustrator.
Bear with us.
Thank you for the help, Didrik.
No worries, I didn't remember either. But the important part here is that we connected a person to be a contributor to this variant, and we specified a role. on this book, because of course a person could have multiple roles or contribute to multiple different books. So he's maybe not a illustrator every time, maybe. So hence why we want to define this on the variant story instead of on the person itself.
Yeah, and it was John Ho that is the illustrator for The Hobbit.
Oh.
So, and this is now specific information just for this variant, right? And then we can look at, for example, the audiobook. This is still The Hobbit, but of course this is it's got a different contributor, and now I'm thinking that Rob is the narrator here. And that gives you, and when we're talking about storytelling, it's about telling the story behind the product, describing the narrator, the narrator's background, etc., so that you give as much information as possible to the customers. So this is quite cool. We can of course add multiple roles here. So I'll just do well, in this case it doesn't make too much sense, but you could have Tolkien as a contributor, being an author here also, but we already have that on the book, but just to show that you could if there's a special contributor on just a particular variant of the book. So publishing this, so that's the first step. We've already created quite a rich description for this, the 4 variants of the book. But I mentioned...
The beautiful part is that, of course, all the variants now share the same product story. So you have both the product story and the variant story combined. So you don't have to input this over and over again for each variant. Hence why the summary might make sense to have on the product still.
Exactly.
But you wanted to move on board.
I wanted to move on. I'm on the next topic. I'm trying to get back to it. So let's keep adding. So we go on the... Now I'm going back to the shape, the definition of the product. I'll just collapse the contributors here. And what I would like to do then is on the variant, you typically have some information about the identification. So it could be ISBN 10, for example, and ISBN 13. Now, the 4 variants that we have, they already have an SKU. Often this is an internal representation by a store. They often have their own SKU, maybe in the ERP or the warehousing service. And you can have multiple identifiers. ISBN 10 and 13 is a good example of this. So what I'll do then is I'll just update this shape, and I'll go back to The Hobbit. And in this case, what we have now, if I go into the specific variant story of The Hobbit here, we see that I have some new fields. I can do the ISBN 10, and I can do the ISBN 13. And of course, in this case, you would typically do this for each variant, because they would have different ISBNs. So I'm just doing like this, because we're not going to have real data here anyway. So that's an example of how you extend it with identification numbers like GTIN ISBN numbers.
Perfect. Then I would like to move on. Okay, I talked about how each variant can have specific specification board.
Yep. So let's go back to the shape on the variant and keep extending this. So now we have contributors, we have some ISBN numbers, and then because the specification of an audiobook and a physical book is not the same, right? So there are a couple of ways to do this. We could use the properties table, where you can define fixed properties for example, physical book, audiobook, and so on. And then you would use the choice component so that the editorial user would select the type of properties to fill in. Alternatively, which is my favorite at least, is to have, what should we call it? We can do physical properties, because a chunk is really, if you don't use it in repeating mode, it's an optional grouping of components that you can fill in. So you can check if physical properties are entered on the product or not. And we'll just do width, and this is in centimeters. We'll do height, centimeters, and we will do, I'll just do weight in gram, I guess. And then you can add all the physical properties that you would like to have. And these are now optional, so that you can fill them in, for example, only for the wallet paperback and the hardcover book. You could then do a different chunk for audio book properties, which could be, I don't know, duration in, I don't know, hours.
Probably for load frames.
Yeah, I think it's exactly 10 hours and 30 minutes. So this is one way of adding multiple group properties that are conditional, meaning that you don't have to fill it in for the all of the product variants. So if we go back again now to the product, we see that we have additional capabilities here. So we have the variant story, and then we have the physical properties, and this is the paperback. So I can say that this is 12 times 20, and weight is exactly 255 grams. And in this case, if I then go to the ebook, what can I do then is add, well, not the audiobook.
I was about to. You probably want to go to the audiobook.
Yeah, 10 hours here. So this is an example of how you can have different types of properties where there's no physical properties on this book, so we don't add it. Now,
and here you can also, of course, add one thing is the duration, one thing is the size. If you want to offline it in an app or whatever, that might be relevant information, but not for a hard copy. And what is also important to always say is that content modeling is not one shoe fits all. So it's also about preferences and how you want to structure your data. The most important part is that you can reuse and structure it in a way that you know how to work with it and find it again. So this is just examples.
Yeah. Like this. Now we have the two of these books are digital. Now we would like the customers to be able to download those, right?
Probably a good idea, or at least stream it.
Yeah. So, and one of the things we can do then is do a file component. Let's do that directly. We could also add it in a chunk, give it different names, but I'll just do a field called downloads, and it's max 50 megabyte file size, and I'll not do. You can do limitations on EPUB or things like this. I'll not do that. Just have a section for files. Now, this is super useful if you actually are building the storefront also, where you want to check if the user has bought this product, and if they bought it, you give access to either directly stream it or download the ebook or audiobook. So if we go into the ebook now, we can see that we have this downloads field. And in this case, with the ebook, that would be EPUB, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and it could be EPUB with images, and then without images. I actually think they write EPUB like this. Let's do one of each, just to be safe.
Now we covered it.
Mm-hmm. So this could be the actual downloads, and the catalog API in Crystallize, which different topic, but when you are fetching the data, this can also be password protected, so that you can guarantee that nobody get access to content they shouldn't have access to. And for the audiobook, I will do like this, uploading to files, and of course I found some big files to upload so we can watch the progress.
So we can wait. I like that. It was a big file to start with, but you took 2.
Yeah. So this could be chapter 1, and this could be chapter 2. So typically, the way you would organize an audiobook, and of course, I can upload more here if you have 10 chapters or whatever. So now we've extended the book quite a lot. So we've added information about the contributors, the illustrator, the narrator, author, specific ISBN 10 and 13 values, optional physical properties and optional audiobook properties, and also digital downloads, which are the actual digital products you can then sell. Or you could either sell as a one-off download or maybe even a subscription, so that you can have a monthly subscription to access one or more audiobooks.
And of course, now we call the file component downloads, which is this is the whole book. What you could do is add a separate one for the audiobook, which is audiobook preview, that you get just half a chapter or something. To maybe you don't like the narrator, so you need another one.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, and also the preview of the pages in a book could also be a separate field. So all of this is about adding rich content, but you want to add it as structured as possible, so that you can render it on the shopping app, so that this is the preview, not just list all the files and have a description on it. What next? Because now we've shown how we can use different types of components to add variant specific and also common components on a product.
I see that there is a plan here behind The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, but also Game of Thrones books in here. So what if since your user might be interested in The Hobbit or Fellowship of the Ring or something, we could, of course, then create some semantic meaning to it and add, since the user is looking at this book, he or she might be also interested in XYZ book.
Yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to create a series of as a separate shape. So this is a document shape where we are going to add series. We have a title, maybe we have a description, and maybe even also we have a image for the series, illustration, some visuals, and then in the series we have a certain amount of books. Let's say that we at least need to have 2 books. If not, it's not a series, right?
True enough.
Super simple shape. And what this gives us the possibility of now is to go into the catalog, and let's just create a folder called series. I want the books on top. And in here, we can create a new series. Now you see that we have a new shape. Lord of the
Forgotten this, but that's all
I was thinking about that. Is it and it also says that I didn't publish the series folder. I want to do that. Boom. So, okay, Lord of the Rings, and we have a description of the Lord of the Rings. I don't know, something like this. And maybe we also then have a. I'll just
separate
use
image.
this image here. I didn't have a specific Lord of the Rings image. Now this is a new shape, which we can use to merchandise books, basically, because we want to make it easy for our customers to see which books are in this series. And we do like this. Let's do the, I'll put on top here. Publish. And now we basically have a series for the Lord of the Rings. Let's do another one. And I'll go in the series and I'll create a new document. Game.
Oh, do the proper name.
What
A
is
Song
that?
of Ice and Fire.
Like this. Yeah, I'll just create this. So we have a Song of Ice and Fire. And that is apparently the proper name for this Game of Thrones, according to Didrik. Yeah, I don't know. Like
Another
this.
thing to mention is that, because I don't think we mentioned it last time, but the reason why we have both a title component and also a name for the item is that, let's say you're on the web, then you're going to have a path for this series, which is going to be series / A Song of Ice and Fire, and then you might want to have a different title in the rendering for the website. Hence, it's duplicate here. Because you could have A Song of Ice and Fire as seen on the Game of Thrones television show. I was thinking about the title, but or / Game of Thrones.
HBO? No.
Yeah, that's HBO.
Okay. Merchandising of books. Now, we didn't change the books, because if I go back to my book here, we don't know actually that this is part of a series.
Not here, at least.
So, should we do that? We can do here a new component where we relate to, let's see, let's call it series, which would be a relation to minimum. No, we don't want to have minimum, because we have books that might not be part of a series. But also, you mentioned one thing is that Game of Thrones, then you see all the books that are in this series. You could render that in the front end, the series, and do all the books. But you might also related series, for example, something like this, where you have an additional field that basically would allow you to add information that, okay, this is part of the Lord of the Rings, but you might be interested in the related series Game of Thrones.
And of course, the reason why it's important to be specific about the naming on the component, because it's easier for you to understand in the UI in Crystallize, but also to fetch on the other side in the catalog API. Okay, so this is related series. It's not the series, while series it's part of this series.
Yeah. And maybe part of could be an even better name. But
Yeah.
now we have series.
It could also be. Oh, sorry. Go.
You might also like, or things like this, right?
Or other books in the same universe, because there is a lot of books. At least for unicorns.
And we talk about naming, and it really comes down to naming. It's super important, because if we don't consider naming and look at this as a shape, it could be called a thing, and all of the fields could be meta, 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 and meta. So it's all about how we describe it, and it goes for editorial usability, but also for the developers that will get this data from the API.
Perfect.
And any other things that we could add to the book here that would make sense?
Well, it's always things you can extend. But what do you want to extend?
Well, I see that the list of things we were going to add is empty, so we don't have anything more. So I understand.
Let's save it for the next stream.
Because what we would like to do next is we will want to extend the universe. So now we've looked at first the basics in the first series on content modeling, shapes, folders, products, etc. This was about how we could have conditional structures, repeating structures, creating more rich relations, and also have variant-specific components. And this really allows you to build out quite complex product universes. Next time, we will take a look at the concepts of bundles and also configurators. So how you can create a little bit more advanced combination of products. So that will be the focus of the last series of the stream. What we would like to do also is we will kick off a parallel stream of probably 3 parts, where we will take this, which is the API output of the structured content we just created, and build a storefront. Because one thing is to see it in the backend, but also it's very nice to see how we can actually build a storefront that uses this data. So that will be a stream that we will start with basic listing of the products, product pages, etc. So that will be the visualization of this. So next week is the plan to do that. You will be there. I will not be there because it will be with Sebastian and Didrik. And then we will follow after those sessions with the last content modeling session on bundles and configurators, which is a quite recurring topic we get on content modeling.
Oh, because there are other ways to organize as well. Now we've seen a lot of drag and dropping with relating items, relating series, but of course you also have grids and topic maps.
Yep. Yeah. And on that note, I think we say like we do in Greenland, then we are between.
That translates well to the internet, so that is good. All right, see you next time.
Good on, bye-bye.